If you think about it, the GameCube became a perfect blend of retro and modern gaming. The graphics are often good enough to be undistracting, even today. Features like rumble and a second stick were standardized, and games now had proper casing. Not that 6-year-old me cared about things like that. But on the flip side, online play was still in its infancy. Many series were still making their 3D debut, and most notably, size limitations were still prevalent. So as often as you had adventures like Wind Waker, you also had experiences that focused on replay value. When games like Luigi's Mansion and Pikmin were originally made, they were meant to be played over and over. Monkey Ball rewarded you for getting better at the levels by giving you new ones, rather than dumping everything it had to offer after a single clear. In other words, a lot of titles had a more arcade-style design to them, and they were placed in the same high-profile positions as the other games, whereas today, they're often seen as budget filler. But of course, that meant that if you're going to lean into replay value, you'd better have a solid gameplay loop. Which brings me to the game I'd like to discuss today, Kirby Air Ride, because I believe it highlights both the benefits and drawbacks of its design style, and I think it'd be fun to examine why that is. Without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, I'm Kardino. I'd like to start by saying that I am by no means a Kirby fan. Not for any particular reason, I just never grew up with the larger series. But there are two games I have extensively played, Epic Yarn on the Wii and Air Ride on the GameCube. But it's safe to say I liked one better than the other. With that being said, it's a very interesting case because its central concept is a kart racer with the simplest controls possible. After all, being beginner-friendly is kind of Kirby's entire thing, not to mention a core philosophy of Masahiro Sakurai, most well known nowadays for making Smash Bros. But how can you get simpler than Mario Kart? I mean, realistically, you're only using 3 to 4 buttons in Double Dash, and that adds a switching mechanic to the formula. Well, Sakurai decided that even this was excessive and cut the total buttons to just 1. Acceleration, items, braking, and drifting are all handled differently. So, before discussing the content of the game itself, I'd like to briefly mention the control scheme. The first thing to note is that you move forward automatically. After all, if going forward is a default for every race, why make someone hold down a button for it? Even Mario Kart would adopt this idea a decade later. But here's the real difference between this and its contemporary. Rather than having a dedicated button for drifting, it's actually shared with your brake. Pressing A will cause you to start sliding until you eventually come to a complete stop. But if you turn during that slide, you can make turns of almost any degree. When recounting the development, Sakurai called this process squeeze and release, relating to the tension this feature adds. Indeed, mess up a drift here, and rather than sliding off-road and simply slowing down, you often are headed full speed toward a wall. Conversely, if you pull it off successfully and fill your drift gauge, you get a small boost. I won't deny that rounding corners with perfect timing yields a lot of satisfaction. But to be honest, the boost you get isn't really notable enough to risk getting for anything more than extreme bends. For anything shallower than about 90 degrees, you'll likely just tap the button to realign yourself for a moment, or sometimes just make the turn naturally. Still, it gives the game a unique feel. Plus, you can still brake at any time by simply keeping the stick straight. So, while unorthodox, I think the concept holds up. But now we get to arguably the weakest part of the experience, copy abilities. There are a few ways you can get these, either through items, question mark panels a la Mario Kart, or by inhaling enemies. These guys will race along the track with you, and although mostly harmless in themselves, potentially provide an excellent opportunity to gain an upper hand. There's a decent amount of abilities, many of which have their own special use cases. For example, the wheel gives you a good top speed and excellent acceleration with the boost panels found on the tracks. But if you want something a little more offensive, try Plasma. which gives you 5 different attacks, depending on how long you wiggle your stick before attacking. At the highest level, you'll send out a massive ball of pain that hones in on anyone near its path. Or for close range combat, the sword ability will automatically slash at nearby foes, giving you a small burst of speed. You can always attack people by wiggling the stick to do a quick spin, but this is much easier and has a wider range too. So what's wrong here? Surely I don't have any complaints about getting a giant bomb to throw at people, right? Well, of course not. But what does annoy me is when I get a bomb, only to see there's a sharp turn ahead of me, because most abilities require the A button to activate, the same button needed to drift. So that bomb is either going to have to be thrown directly in front of me, or right after the turn. If my target is too far ahead, that bomb is basically just going to waste. It's the same deal with plasma. I'm wiggling the stick, building up a charge, only to come to a turn and be forced to lose it all. Can you imagine if items and drifting were mapped to the same button in Mario Kart? That would not fly. Now, to steelman the argument, perhaps the point is to give you an ultimatum. Do you lose time by ramming into the wall but preserve your item, or use it now? But I don't think this idea holds water at all. For as non-essential as a drifting boost is, it will always be better than failing the turn completely. It's a shame because the gameplay of inhaling enemies on the racetrack is great. Maybe you'll seek out a basic enemy for a quick projectile or target the sword fighter. Or maybe if you don't see any abilities you want right now, you can inhale 2 at once to get something random. Just hope you don't get the sleep ability. If they had just mapped abilities to use X or B, it would have been amazing. But sadly, it's a critical flaw that exists, in my opinion, for no real reason. Now, there is one more piece to this puzzle. Whenever you come to any sort of ledge, you can push down to jump. Once in the air, simply switch to aviator controls to fly. Depending on your vehicle, your ground and air speeds may be drastically different, so it's good to keep in mind. The only downside is that you have to stay directly in line with the track, so there aren't any opportunities to take shortcuts, which I fear cuts back on the potential of the mechanic. Plus, while I don't mind them, it adds another layer to learn, which seems antithetical to the extreme simplicity of the game's conceit. But luckily, the controls don't completely kill the game. They're still good enough where it can be quite enjoyable. So let's look at the package surrounding them. The first thing you see is an intro cutscene full of pure action. Where Double Dash's intro emphasized insanity, this one is more intense. Shoutouts especially to this cinematic sword scene. I have no idea why it's here, but I love it. And it leads straight into this menu that will probably be burned into my memory forever. It's pure Y2K futurism, with discs switching out between the different modes, stinger transitions between menus, and gears moving in the background. That music is a perfect match too. The bass and drums bring so much life. It all comes together to get you ready to compete in a way that no Mario Kart menu has. Except maybe Super Circuit. But enough complimenting the menus, let's finally get to the content. This game is divided into 3 modes, the titular Air Ride, Top Ride, and City Trial. And we'll start with the strongest one. People of olden times may have settled their quarrels with a duel, but any man of modern civilized society will now choose a 7-minute match of City Trial. Basically, you're dropped into this small sandbox and you've got to collect patches to power up your machine. And at the end, you all face off in a random event like a destruction derby, target flight, or even something simple like a drag race. The thing is, it's very hard to specialize in everything, so you'll probably only be proficient at a couple things. Now, I know what you're saying. That sounds good, but how do I know what to specialize in? Well, that's where some of the luck comes in, because there's really no way to know for sure what you'll be doing unless you manually change it in settings. So you just gotta watch for a stadium prediction and hope it's correct. But there is some way to give yourself the advantage. Let's say you want to focus on pure speed, but you're not finding many blue or purple patches. Well, you can always switch to a different ride, which has its own base stats. One of them might be an all-rounder, some might be good at flying but have slower speed, or some may have high ground speed but are really bad at turning. Once you pick your base, it's time to build on top of it to hopefully reduce as many of the negatives as you can. But of course, the rides everybody wants are the legendaries. You know the Dragoon from Smash Bros? Yeah, it actually came from this game. It grants you unparalleled flight and can even hold its own on the ground. It's your all-around great ride. But what if you want something more specialized? That's where the Hydra comes in. It may not be great at flight, but just charge this baby up and you'll beat almost any race hands down. And with both of these rides having obscene amounts of health, you aren't guaranteed to win, but let's just say you'll definitely have the advantage. But you don't want that smelly nerd to win. He data mined Mario Kart to find the optimal combo and item bags in all the races. So why not ram into his ride to make him start from square one? And while you're at it, why not get 2 more friends to gang up on them for some 4-player action? Suddenly, this cool little game becomes a test of survival. And it certainly doesn't discourage it either, with red boxes giving you abilities and green boxes giving you special items to ruin everyone's day. These can range from a landmine to giant spike balls to a firework launcher, which is effectively a gun. So with each vehicle having a limited amount of HP, being aggressive can be a viable strategy. And I can assure you, the only thing that hurts more than being Mario Karted is finding 2 of the 3 pieces to a legendary ride, only for them to be ripped away from you at the last minute. Randomly, the city will also have a special event, which may help or hinder participants. The city lighthouse may turn on and allow you to recover health, a dense fog may cover the city, meteors may come raining down, or you may be invited to hunt tack in exchange for a bunch of items. Who's tack? I don't know. I'm not a Kirby fan, remember? Ask me who Prince Ababe is next time. In short, City Trial excels at allowing players to either have a chill run or an intense battle royale. In that way, it's like Mario Party, with the advantage of having constant action and a shorter runtime. One time you're hacking at people in a destruction derby, next you're thrown into a surprise alliance to fight King DDD because he has an unholy amount of health to the point that I could only ever beat him as an adult. Next moment you lose to a drag race because all the items started bouncing all over the place because that's apparently a good event. The one downside is that you need the right friend group for this to work, because as fun as it is to upgrade your cart, not everyone is going to love going for each other's throats. Plus, with only one map, once you've explored it all, there's only so much fun to be had in it, something that I feel is emphasized by Freerun. Don't get me wrong, it's a harmless addition, but with no power-ups or events, you'll just kinda try out a few new rides and then decide to move on. But at the end of the day, if you have the right people, this is a solid multiplayer experience. So far, the content is looking pretty good, so let's check out the other modes. Air Ride is the main racing mode of the game. You've got 9 different tracks, one of which you need to unlock, covering various themes like grass, fire, and desert. Some of them are more unique, but I'd say they're all about the same level of quality. If you told me any of these was your favorite, I wouldn't question it, outside of maybe Fantasy Meadows. Something else that's interesting is that many of the tracks are defaulted to only 2 laps, meaning that races are fairly short. Not that that's a bad thing, but combined with the unique racing mechanics, this game sets itself apart pretty well. Another distinction is that these things are a lot more cinematic than you might expect. Many of them have you grinding on rails to show off some kind of special visual. Now, while I never thought twice about this as a kid, you could say it takes away from the action. I suppose the thought process was that it would give you a break from the chaos, but with only 4 racers, there often isn't too much to take a break from. Still, they're fun enough, and are occasionally even used for shortcuts. The other distinction is that the turns here are a lot sharper than you might first expect. Because you're meant to boost, there are a lot of acute or hairpin turns that will likely catch you off guard for the first couple times. I mean, even the first course has one. Now, one thing I will compliment the game on is its thoughtful use of terrain. See, in addition to stars, which effectively act as hovercrafts, there are also bikes, which have terrible airtime, but ride on the ground. This means that stars can reach places the bikes can't, while the bikes are usually heavier and get immediate access to boost panels. You can get them as a star, but you either have to land on them or slide, so they aren't always as helpful. Everything feels fairly well balanced, and you'll soon find one that fits your style. As a kid, I liked the Wagon Star for its ease of control and high health, but nowadays I like the Wheelie Scooter and Shadow Star. Meanwhile, my friend favors the Swerve Star, like some kind of psychopath. Okay, I joke, but I'll admit, each course favors different types of vehicles, and while I may detest it in almost any other circumstance, it does have a home in Machine Passage, which has lots of straight hallways and harsh bends. Here's the biggest problem with Air Ride as a mode though. There's no Grand Prix option. There are other rules, like enabling health bars and damage, or even switching to a timed format instead of using laps, which I almost never use. You can even purposely lag the game to make it slower, in case you're having too much fun. But consecutive races just aren't available. The closest it gets is tracking how many wins each player has per session, but even that is almost unnoticeable. But there are at least local leaderboards. You can either do a time trial where you race a set number of laps for the best solo time, or get the best single lap in free run. But even with these options, the staying power is a little lacking. Still, it's a fine enough mode on the whole. Now the last mode here is Top Ride, and it's probably the most removed out of everything else. Like, even Air Ride will come up as a single race sometimes after a city trial round, but this one is purely its own thing. There are two control styles here, each denoted by a ride. Pick the free star and you go in the direction the stick is pointing, but choose the steer star and you tilt the stick like a steering wheel. So, after picking the free star, you race on a miniature track with a top-down view, while using tons of wacky items to trip up opponents. However, because everything is miniaturized, getting hit with something is a lot more impactful than in the main mode. It also means that boosting correctly sees a lot more usefulness, with lots of tight corners. It's probably the most satisfying the mechanic gets. In terms of courses, there are 7 in total, once again following general themes. And honestly, I enjoy them all. Each theme comes with different hazards, like a tree that drops bombs, or grind rails made of light that flicker in and out of existence. So if I enjoy the maps and even controls, why do I and seemingly everyone else overlook this mode? Well, once again, the lack of structure is partially to blame. Sure, the free run and time trials are included, but those are single player options. In multiplayer, you want something with a buildup of tension. But with the courses so small, many races last for about a minute, even despite having 5 or more laps. Don't get me wrong, it's fun momentarily, but when you look back on the experience, you don't get those come-from-behind victory stories like in City Trial. Sure, Top Ride might see someone take first place at the last second, but that other player was probably leading for less than 30 anyway, so there just isn't as much room for excitement. So what this mode turns into is a cute distraction that almost everyone forgets about. When playing for this video, I got achievements for finishing first place on each course 10 times or more. Given this is the same profile that has a high score from 2008, I don't think we played this thing much at all. Though, to be fair, the records may have been affected by me wiping my brother's entire memory card when I was little. And I'll do it again! Oh, speaking of achievements, that's another cool thing this game does. Like Smash Bros, by simply playing the game and experimenting, you can check boxes across 3 grids. You can unlock them naturally, or you can view requirements for adjacent rules to the ones you've already completed. It's a really simple but effective system that constantly rewards you with new content, whether it be a sound test, a new character, or even just a ride for free play. That being said, City Trial is by far the most rewarding grid to tackle, since it not only gives you new rides, but new stadium events as well. I'll tell you now, unlocking new content I never knew existed after playing the game on and off for about 20 years is a surreal experience. Air Ride's list is alright, with the last course being unlocked via this method, although the only other meaningful content you unlock is new stars and bikes. But Top Ride has almost nothing to give you. The most you can expect is alternate music or a new color for Kirby. It doesn't help the perception Top Ride already has, for sure. One thing I will say though is that while I appreciate the addition as a whole, some challenges are much more attainable or intuitive than others. Air Ride really likes to give you stupidly hard times to beat. Completing Beanstalk Park with the piece of trash rocket star in under 3 minutes is a trauma I will not soon forget. And City Trial will give you really random stuff, like destroying a specific star with another one, or taking advantage of a certain event. Like, there's one that asks you to get trampled on by Dynablade. Yeah, sure. I have better things to do than to wait around to get stepped on by a giant bird. And yet I still did it to finish the grid. Sometimes I'm my own worst enemy. Now, I understand that you weren't intended to complete this within a fortnight like I did. But remember, I used an old save file, and we never even got halfway through the green grid, let alone much of the others. Still, I'll always admit that hearing that achievement notification is unfailingly satisfying. Last but not least, this game also included LAN play. So, if you managed to have between 2 and 4 GameCubes together, you could play across multiple screens. Though, I don't really get why you do it. I mean, seeing as you could only have 4 simultaneous players, why not just use 4 controllers like normal? Maybe if you had a real bad problem with screen peaking? Let's face it, the real reason you'd use this option is to justify being one of the 8 people in the world to have the broadband adapter. Only a select few have the privilege of seeing the LAN play menu. For what it's worth though, it seemed to play well enough, with the occasional frame stutter or teleporting rival, but that's to be expected, and I was using a wireless connection to test it anyway, so it wouldn't be fair to penalize it too much. So yeah, that's Kirby Air Ride, a concept that was very much of its time. A third of the game is really good, and it's all you'll really want to play. It sits there right up with the A-tier multiplayer games of the system. But the other modes are much less notable. And while you can get by with ignoring them and be just fine, I think it's fair to be disappointed that they didn't contribute more to the package. Because in retrospect, hardly anyone cares about them. They're the textbook example of making the most out of as little content as possible. The idea of making a game with less than 10 courses would be laughable today, and was seemingly done to simply produce something quickly. Even Sakurai admitted that outside of basic modeling, the entire thing took less than 4 months to develop. But these shortcomings were why reviews were so mixed back in the day, and why until the Switch 2 Direct, I wasn't sure if we would even get a sequel. But lo and behold, we got one. So I think it's only fair to take a look at it next and see what changes they made over 2 decades later. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.